The following review of Transformers Cyberverse contains major spoilers. If you have not watched this episode yet, view at your own risk. Hello everyone, I'm Autobot Sonic the Telltale Gamer, bringing latest and everything Telltale Games, Transformers, and more. So, first off, I'd like to apologize for the lack of videos this week. I've been rather lax with it just because, like, I've just, like, decided, like, just take, like, a little brief hiatus, and I've had some kind of personal things going on that just have prevented me from really sitting down to make videos, but, I hope to get back to it this week. I'm definitely gonna go back to, uploading more Life is Strange 2, and hopefully starting my, uploading Batman the Telltale Series Episode 5, and try to get, that and Batman the Enemy Within done before, The Walking Dead, the final season finishes, so look forward to those kinds of videos in the future. But for today's review, we are going to be looking at Transformers Cyberverse Season 1, Episode 9, Shadow Striker. Now, this episode, after Terminal Velocity, this episode does have surprisingly dark moments to it. Not it's not as dark as Terminal Velocity did, but I feel like this episode had like a more precise idea in mind, and it had a better ending than episode 8 did. Everything about this episode felt a lot better than, well, I mean, not like saying that it was a bad episode, it felt more put together well than episode 8 did. And not saying that Terminal Velocity was a bad episode, it did, but just I feel like some things could have been done better, and this episode does a lot better. So as the episode name implies, this episode focuses on the origins of the brand new character Shadow Striker that was created specifically for this show. So, and it is a great way to get to know her character and set her up as kind of a mirror to Bumblebee, in a sense that she is essentially the Decepticon equivalent of Bumblebee, which I find really cool. So we're going to go over see this episode did right and what it did wrong. So this episode starts off with Bumblebee and Windblade sparring inside the Decepticon Seeker ship. Bumblebee is her evenly matched for a bit until Windblade ends up beating him. Then at that point, Windblade reveals that it's essentially that they're sparring because she's hoping that with this, Bumblebee will remember some of his memories of the war and different his fighting textiles and all that. But Bumblebee thinks it's just a lost cause. So out of options, Windblade decides to plug Bumblebee back into the ship with the cortical psychic patch and tries to get him to remember some of his memories during the war in the hopes that he'll remember some of his fighting skills and all that. So during this initial flashback that occurs in the episode, we see Shadow Striker, who of course is the main character, essentially the main character in this episode, has captured Optimus alongside two of her other Seekers. So she goes to report to Megatron that she's captured Optimus, and while she's outside, Bumblebee is sneaking into the facility to rescue Optimus. So he ends up taking out the two Seekers and then frees Optimus, but not before Shadow Striker comes back and the two fight. It's during this point that I should also mention that while they're fighting this big Energon storehouse with Bumblebee's resorts to not shooting them, because if he did, then the whole building would explode. So it's at this point that Shadow Striker and Bumblebee are fighting, and then when Shadow Striker starts shooting Bumblebee and he tells her that they're gonna blow everyone up, she stops and switches to two bladed kunai type weapons or daggers, which I think is really cool to see that we have more different variety with Energon type weapons. We've had in the past, in Robots in the Skies, we had Bumblebee use the Decepticon Hunter, and that showed on different points. We had Strong Arm used as a crossbow, Sideswipe as katana, Bumblebee as a staff. We had Knockout with his Energon prod back in Transformers Prime, and then we had in animated, we had Optimus with his axe, we had Prowl with his ninja stars, Ratchet with his magnet hands, Bumblebee with his stingers, which Cyberverse Bumblebee also has. So it's cool to see that that when Transformers shows introduce new ways for Energon weapons to come. And I gotta say, I really dig the look of Shadow Striker's Energon daggers. So as the two fight, Bumblebee manages to beat Shadow Striker and escape with Optimus, but then she tries to chase them, which leads to Bumblebee ending up shooting at Shadow Striker with one of his shots hitting the Energon and blowing up the base with Shadow Striker and the 2 Seekers inside of it. So Bumblebee and Optimus get away, and that's where the first flashback ends. After that flashback, Bumblebee asks Windblade what happened to Shadow Striker after that, because he thinks that she died after the events of that, but Windblade says that she came back, sort of. So Windblade tells Bumblebee to look at another memory, and so this one is of him in a crashing in a crash landing like Energon ship that's on a route to crash land in the middle of Iacon City. So Bumblebee is trying to take over the ship and try to redirect it to crash outside of Iacon. As he's doing this, however, he is interrupted by Shadow Striker once again, who looks a lot not too much different, but she has like one of her arms and legs. She looks kind of like a patchwork job almost, in which we Bumblebee, thinking that Shadow Striker had died, Shadow Striker explains to Bumblebee what happened is that after Bumblebee had blown up the warehouse and left Shadow Striker for dead, she was nearly dead until she was found by Shockwave, who managed to rebuild her using the parts of her dead Seeker underlings, which I gotta say, that is like really, for Cyberverse, again, like this is just like really dark subject matter. Like if this was in like this was like something I would expect in Transformers Prime, and sure, it's not as dark as like the stuff that was in Terminal Velocity, but still, it's dark to see that literally Shadow Striker was rebuilt using the parts of her dead teammates, and I gotta like that, and just again, it creates like a good sense of like character for Shadow Striker. Now we see that she essentially blames Bumblebee for like all the bad things that happened to her in her life, and she explains in which that she tried to go back to like her fighting style because she was like the best warrior that Megatron had, but after that, like her body could never readjust to the new her new parts, so she ended up having to change her her whole fighting style and all that, and so she forever resents Bumblebee for like essentially turning her into like this pathetic warrior now, and so she has a brand new fighting style now. Instead of she uses like an Energon shotgun mixed with like an Energon machete, which I thought like I would never see like a character, like a Transformers character, use like an Energon machete. Like sure, like we've had like Windblade use like her short swords, and other like characters have used like Energon blades and all that, but like an Energon machete, I think, is crazy. So during the fight, Shadow Striker and Bumblebee are fighting, but of course Bumblebee is able to beat her again and is able to safely crash a ship outside of Iacon. Though during this, one of the like suspension beams for the ship falls down on both Bumblebee and Shadow Striker as the ship starts to burn up, and so Shadow Striker is happy knowing that she's going to die with Bumblebee, just so that he can suffer just like she did. But of course Bumblebee manages to free himself by cutting the rebar in, or like the girder, so that he can escape it. But as he's about to leave, he doesn't want to leave Shadow Striker to the same fate that he did before, so he frees her as well, which completely surprises Shadow Striker, and the two of them escape the ship just as it starts to go up in flames. And then, but it's at this point that Shadow Striker is about to betray Bumblebee and kill him before she's shot by Grimlock, who arrives alongside Ratchet and Chromia. Grimlock's about to kill Shadow Striker, but then Bumblebee urges Grimlock to let her go, so she escapes. And it creates like this. I'm really proud of Cyberverse for doing this, and that it shows like that, like essentially, yeah, Shadow Striker is the Decepticon equivalent of Bumblebee. They're both speedster type character like frames, where Bumblebee's like this fun, like happy loving, like scout who's, I guess, has this strong sense of justice and doing what's right. Shadow Striker, on the other hand, is this really dark and like serious warrior who's consumed by hate and just like thinks that everything in her life, like that she's like had nothing but struggles with her life, and that like that Bumblebee is the reason for all of that. So I think this episode serves as a great way to introduce Shadow Striker, and it just works really well. So after that, the memory ends, which Bumblebee realizes that even though he was a great fighter, he also found out that with the memories, it's important to know that like not everything has to result in a fight. So with Windblade seeing that Bumblebee has gained like his like fighting spirit back, the two start to spar once again. That's how the episode ends. And so that was my review of Transformers Cyberverse Season 1, Episode 9, Shadow Striker. If I had to rate this episode, I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. Definitely a really, really good episode. Serves as a great introduction to the character of Shadow Striker. We get a little more Bumblebee too, but really, Shadow Striker steals the show this episode. Deanna McGovern did a great job of voicing Shadow Striker. She's just like showing like her pain through all this, and going back like to other episodes, I've noticed that, and it shows a nice little continuity between this and like previous episodes. Like if you go back to the flashbacks in Megatron's My Hero, when Shadow Striker fights Bumblebee and takes him to Megatron alongside Soundwave, you can see that she actually has like the Seeker arm and leg that she gets in this flashback. And it's also nice to know that we even get more of Shockwave too, if we're emphasizing he's like kind of going back to the mad scientist like type of Shockwave that we saw in Transformers Prime and the IDW comics. And I just really like this episode. The only problem is, though, again, this 10-minute format. I just wish we had more, because some parts of it did feel kind of rushed. That like I wish we just got more like I wish we got more of just like what happened like in between Shadow Striker being rebuilt by Shockwave and maybe like her like struggling with her new body. Like we got some of it, but I just wish we had a little bit more, and that's what the half point is. But other than that, this was almost like a fantastic episode. And not saying that Terminal Velocity was a bad episode, this one was just really, really good. So that's gonna be it for this review. I'll be back soon with episode 10 Macadams. If you like this review, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later.